Absolutely, bringing us, of course, some of the VIP guests that have arrived at the cemetery in Pretoria East for the funeral of the late Dr. Skweyiya. I think we've just lost visuals now, but we just saw the coffin making its way there, and I understand some of the families have gone back, have also started arriving out at the cemetery. We're just talking of air now, Desiree, talking about there's our Coterge again and the coffin.
As we continue to bring you the last part of the funeral service of Dr. Sydney Themba Zola Skweyiya. We continue to unpack some of the events of this morning's service at the Christian Revival Church, but also speak to the Batupili principles that came up today. Do you want to just take us through some of those?
I mean, I don't even think people know that there's 8 principles that are the Batupili principles. One at the top of that list being consultations, which basically says that citizens should be consulted about the level and quality of the public services that they receive, and wherever possible should be given a choice about the services that are offered.
It also speaks to service standards. The hashtag on social media, Zola Skweyiya funeral. Go on there and tell us about your sense of service provision when you interact with the public service. Are you getting the service that you expect? Are you happy? Let us know. But it also speaks to access, courtesy, information, openness and transparency, redress,
value
for money for me is quite important at this time when we're talking about the possibility that Eskom will be raising our tariffs. Is that value for money for us? Let us know, interact with us, and let's carry this broadcast together.
Well, some of the sentiments that have also been coming through on social media, Desiree, in regards to this, I think we also spoke about it off air, the fact that a lot of people might not even know what this great fallen hero had actually achieved for South Africans. A lot of sentiments on Twitter saying that it's funny how South Africans, we tend to want to actually learn about the person after their death. So there has been lots of calls. I mean, with this stalwarts that have been passing every week, there has been wide calls to include the South African history into the curriculum. So I think that's a debate for another day.
Another beautiful part of this morning's service for me was his wife, Tutu Skweyiya's tribute to her husband. It was really beautiful, a lovely tribute from a wife to her husband. But it touched on something that is a constant conversation in the South African public, the scourge and the challenge of patriarchy. And she mentioned something which I think really touched a nerve for me, saying that her husband treated her as an equal. That for me was really important and very relevant.
Let's take you live there now, Desiree, as that cortege, of course, continues. We are seeing that final headway of the coffin going into the Pretoria East Cemetery. And as you can see there, we do understand that is a military car. He did receive full military honors for his burial. And we do understand that that flag might be rolled up and given to the family as we keep watch of the funeral proceedings. We are currently monitoring. Also, we can see there on your insert the gravesite of which the late Dr. Zola Skweyiya is going to be
finally be laid to rest.
Absolutely.
And you're speaking about the honors, and part of the processes of the Category 1 official funeral is the condolence books that are all over public spaces throughout the country, at airports, in Parliament, at Premier's offices, and the public is still encouraged to go through and sign some of those condolence books.
All right, so we definitely are monitoring what's currently happening. As you can see there, that's the army vehicle that is leading that cortege of the coffin, as of course they head on to the Pretoria East Cemetery. We're not sure how long until they actually get to the actual gravesite, and we were trying to get one of our reporters to actually
get that indication
tell us as to how
some
long
of our reporters
we are waiting. But it looks like everything is ready from the gravesite part of things.
The one feature of this service has been the keeping to time. They started promptly at 8:30.
And we don't see that quite
often.
They
tried a bit to keep to time, but couldn't help that. But they were not too far out.
All right, I do understand. We will be talking to one of our reporters who's also stationed at the gravesite in no time.
Alicia, another aspect I'd like to bring in here is how we continue to refer to former President Thabo Mbeki as just the principal for the late Dr. Skweyiya. But another aspect which is interesting, and it was mentioned in the obituary, is about how Dr. Skweyiya came into political life as a teenager, and his hand was held by the father of the former president, Mr. Govan Mbeki. He was the one, Umkhabulisile, taught him about politics and how to care about your society and be involved.
From great giants like that.
So there's always the backstories that we don't get to hear about, which is so interesting. And the challenge is then going on to the youth of our country to learn about these stories and talk about them.
You know, they were saying at the passing of Mamweni last week that, I mean, it is about time that we as the youth of South Africa, the future of South Africa, need to start now thinking about what it is that we're going to do with these leaders gone. How are we going to emulate their values and principles, and also bring in a new regiment, because we are moving with the times, but also just make sure that we resonate with what they brought to us as South Africans.
And with the passing of each stalwart, we try to talk about the areas that they impacted on. One of the speakers, and I'll talk about him again, and I heard some of the people that Aldrin spoke to touched on what he said as well, or Professor Sangweni, when he said, President Ramaphosa, we love you a lot, and we love the messages that you are sending out about. You remember at the beginning of the week, the president announced the 4 lions of investment that will go and scour the earth and look for investment for the country. And he said this project will not succeed if you do not bring on board public service and make sure that they understand their role in making sure that these things are implemented.
Absolutely.
So some of the interesting things that came out.
Well, just on the back of that, even Mr. Derek Hanekom, the minister, saying that he called upon every South African saying, you know, it's all good and well to just talk about these principles and say, these are the people that brought us these principles, but what are you doing yourself? It starts with you to emulate those principles so that younger people can actually learn from us.
So really, in the end, I suppose the value of these broadcasts is not just to show the pomp and ceremony, but to also say, let's reflect on these things that have previously been spoken about and how we can go ahead and implement them to make South Africa a better country.
Absolutely. No, I have to read this for you, Desiree, and of course for our viewers at home while we monitor that Coterge that is going to his final resting place, Dr. Zola Skweyiya's final resting place here. Here's something that I found very interesting while reading through some of the great research that has now come out. It says that at Mbizana, in Mount Aleph and other areas, when Skweyiya was so popular that mothers that were receiving the child grant would actually sing a special song.
It was a new thing then.
Absolutely. They would sing a special song whenever he arrived in their communities, saying, Niyambona uyasebenza, uwondla abantwana bethu, basically, which translates to saying that, do you see him? He's working very hard and he's feeding my children. I mean,
Mbuli used to say, Mintiro iyabulabula.
Wise words there to describe,
you know,
befitting candidates indeed. So let's look at that now, Desiree. I'm sure we just a couple of minutes before we get to the gravesite. What do you anticipate is going to happen there? I suppose the rolling off the flag, and of course the flag will be handed over to the family, and then the burial.
Which are some of the processes that complete the category 1 official funeral, which will be the handing of the flag, removing it, because thus far it had draped the casket, and now it's going to be removed, folded up, and given to the family. Obviously the interment and the burial eventually. I am not too certain about how far we can be able to cover and broadcast that part of the funeral.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about these things, that there's also rituals that the families also have to adhere to, particularly when it comes to such burials. And we do understand that a very small amount of VIPs and close family is going to be going to that final resting place. We can see the dignitaries have also started arriving. We can see on the left insert there of the grave.
You know what would be beautiful as well, Alicia? Last week during Omamwini's funeral, you got shots of different stages of this process to the cemetery, where people were putting up their shots on social media about how they are experiencing this process, even though they're not part of it. So go on. Hashtag Zola Skweyiya funeral. Let us know where you are when you are filming on your phone, on your smartphone, this procession as it heads to the Pretoria East Cemetery for the final resting place of Dr. Skweyiya.
No, can't be no.
Iphithiphithi zethu, ngeziphithi zethu.